Hi teachers, Brother Judd here, and I hope you had a wonderful Easter celebration. I've got some help for your lesson here in Jacob chapter 2. Now, Jacob talks a lot about pride. In his attempts to help the Nephites come closer to Jesus Christ, he needs to help them overcome a fundamental sin that not only plagued them, but plagues all of us as well, and that is the universal sin of pride. So a couple of things. I'm not really going to get into what's in the curriculum. You can read that for yourselves. But I want to discuss a skill that as you're going through the curriculum and using some of the questions provided in the curriculum, I think there's one slight tweak that if you use this skill, you can generate much better discussions with your class. So what do I mean? Here's just for example, all right? So the principle or the idea here is to ask questions that invite discovery. And these are questions that are open-ended questions. We all have experiences with pride. It's just sometimes our students, and maybe even we ourselves, don't have a lot of opportunities to articulate exactly what pride is and how it affects us and affects our lives. So ask questions that help learners discover gospel truths on their own. Questions can engage students in the process of understanding the scriptures and can help them identify and understand important gospel truths. So as you come down here to the possible learning activity, it says display the following scenarios and invite students to look for evidence of pride. Okay, that's pretty good. Might I suggest that instead you ask a question like, I'm going to give you a number of scenarios here, and I want you to see if you can identify what's common amongst all of them. So instead of front-loading it, having them look for pride, you're leaving it more open so that they can discover this problem of pride on their own. So, you can read these on your own, but I think as the students go through, you change the question away from, look for evidence of pride to what's the problem? What's common amongst all of these different stories? Then, they could talk about pride, they could talk about arrogance, they could talk about overconfidence, they could talk about ingratitude, any number of things, and then have a discussion about, okay, what's really at the root of all of these things? And then you can hit him with this great President Benson quote: pride is a sin that can readily be seen in others, but is rarely admitted in ourselves. And why do you think that is? Why is pride so difficult to detect in ourselves, but we can so easily detect it in other people? And again, it all goes to this idea of asking questions that invite discovery. Now, there are a couple examples of questions that never invite discovery. Yes/no questions will hardly ever invite real discovery. So, for example, if you were to say it this way, instead of, you have this talk about the negative aspects of each of these scenarios, you eventually boil it down to pride, and you say, is pride hard to detect in ourselves but easy to detect in other people? Yes. Okay, no discussion there. Instead, why do you think pride? And you can easily detect the difference there. The one just shuts down discovery and discussion. The other invites discovery and discussion. Here's another example of where you could do that. So you go through, and really this lesson is very good at being in the scriptures, using quotes from prophets, whatnot, very focused on Jesus Christ, invite students to really participate. But you come down, here's a good example of a question that invites discovery. What are additional ways you see pride manifested in our world today? Okay. How is pride the opposite of the character of Jesus Christ? You could ask further discovery questions. How have you seen the love of Jesus Christ combat pride in your life? What does keeping the Savior at the forefront of our thoughts do to overcoming pride? And so again, avoid the yes/no questions. Keep everything open-ended so it invites discovery and discussion. Lots of really good, as mentioned, the curriculum does a fantastic job, principles on overcoming pride. And here at the very end, you may not use all of these, but the Quentin L. Cook quote, again from President Benson, this is one of my favorite definitions. Pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having it more than the next man. I mean, you could have a fantastic discussion about that. Guys, why do you think this is? And then, just more quotes. This lesson really has a wealth of information So many good resources, quotes, discussions based in the scriptures. But again, you have to avoid those yes-no questions if you want to invite discovery and discussion. So I don't know how many times I've said that in this training, but just make sure that you're avoiding the yes-no questions. A topic such as pride, as universal and as broad as it is, we don't want to limit it by just using yes-no questions. You got to keep them open-ended. That will invite discovery. That will invite discussion, and you'll have a great experience with this lesson. So best of luck to you. Thank you for participating in these trainings, and I'll have another training for you next week. And until then, God bless and take care.